Hello and welcome to the Halted production show. My name's Donnie. I'm here with Austin. And Austin, today we have a treat. This is episode 2.
What would the treat be?
Okay, so we have a 2-seat, mid-engine
All right.
sports car
Oh.
with pop-up headlights,
All right.
the way cars should have headlights.
I agree.
And not only are we just talking about a car, we're talking about a car that was the 1984 Indianapolis 500 pace car. It beat out the Corvette.
I was going to say, what are we talking? The Corvette?
No, we're not talking about a Corvette.
What are we talking about?
Do you want to know what we're talking about?
I do.
Okay, what we're talking about is very wild. It's very fierce. And it's ferocious.
We're talking
Austin, I give you the Pontiac Fiero.
very underwhelming.
Oh, come on.
Oh my God! It's a Pontiac Fiero.
Thank you. And Pontiac is driving excitement. I know that didn't come on until the 90s, but still.
They were driving excitement.
Now, the Fiero only lasted for 4 years, 84 to 88. Now, they did try to do a prototype in 90. As you see, that didn't happen at all. Now, a lot of what was done on the Fiero, though, made its way into other GM cars, but we'll get to that momentarily.
Right.
Basically, what happened was Pontiac wanted his own 2-seat sports car. Now, they didn't want to compete with the Corvette. GM didn't want them to compete with the Corvette. There was also the thought of the oil embargo that we had just finished up and were working our way out of as a country.
Well, first off, how many did they produce?
They produced 370,000. 370,168 to be exact. Now,
To put that in perspective, the MR2, their biggest competitor, along the same time period, sold 163,000. So, less than half.
yeah, less than half of the production, or double the production of the MR2 was the Fiero.
I mean, but when it comes down to it, the production or the MSRP was
$79.99.
and then versus the MR2, which was what?
$10,999.
$10,999.
Yes.
So you're looking at $2,000 difference. But when we're talking price, so $79.99 in 1984. That is what, about $20,000 in today's money.
19.7, yes.
So what's the closest you can get today in the 2-door? Forget mid-engine, because the only thing you can get with a mid-engine is, a fancy sports car, like real fancy.
The closest competitor in a mid-engine sports car would probably be the Alpha 4C.
All right.
That would be the only thing that would be around this.
But it's nowhere near the price range.
No,
so if we're
not at
talking
all.
price range, 2-door
If
sports
you're wanting
car,
to spend 20-ish or, above,
you're looking at Miata.
you're looking at a Miata.
And those start at 25, the base of the base model.
Yes. Yeah, and for that $25,000, are you getting the fun and the driving excitement of a Fiero? No, you're not.
Well, I mean, when you say fun and driving excitement, are we talking about the Fieros with the Iron Duke? Or are we talking about the Fieros with the 6-cylinder?
Now, that goes back into the point of why car? Why car? So, Pontiac wanted their own 2-seat sports car, as I said, but they didn't want it to compete with the Corvette because the Grand National was doing that on its own, and GM didn't like that at all. So, they gave them the 4-cylinder Iron Duke, 110 horsepower, 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine, made into a 4-speed manual transmission or a 4-speed automatic.
And they did this all on an extreme budget. So,
yeah.
I mean, the total from design to the cost of the building the machines that built the car to producing the car, they were on a budget of $400 million, which is substantially lower than anything else, than any other GM car from production or from prototype to production.
And this really started part sharing in General Motors cars. This
yay.
yeah. This had the Iron Duke, which was in everything that had a 4-cylinder. The Iron Duke was produced and used up until 2004.
The Iron Duke was produced in I would bet it's the most common, the most recognized government car ever.
Yeah, the Grumman LLV.
Yes, which is going to be coming up on a future episode.
So stay tuned. But the thing with the Iron Duke was, even though it was a heavy engine, even though it didn't have the horsepower, even though it only had a 5,500 RPM rev range, you could still have fun with a Fiero.
Yeah,
Because
when it's mated to you can have fun with anything if it's mated to a manual transmission.
Exactly. And the thing with the Fiero is it weighed less than 2,800 pounds.
That's true.
So you could, at the time, you had the Fiero, which weighed 2,800 pounds, or you had the Corvette, which weighed 4,000 pounds.
Yeah, but I mean, the Corvette also had double the cylinders and
triple the horsepower.
Yes. So when you talk about the weight, it comes with, I mean, but the Corvette is in another class.
Yeah, it's all relative. It's all relative. And we mentioned the Corvette only because that was the other sports car that General Motors had.
So it had the Iron Duke. It also came with a 2.8 liter V6.
Yes, once they got to the Fiero GT, they were able to get the 2.8 V6 in there, which had 152 horsepower.
Did it only come in the GT? I thought that it had the option before. Some Fieros had the option before the GT, because I thought the GT, they added another engine. They added just horsepower and suspension tuning and wider tires. I thought that you could have a Fiero that, let's see, it came in, I believe that you could get one just in a regular car and not just the GT.
No, that's right. You could get the SE, which was the 4th highest trim level. And then you could get the GT. But there were very few SE V6s sold. Most of the time, if you see a Fiero with a V6, it's a GT.
Yes. But, if you see a Fiero, what you got to do is just throw an LS on it.
Well, actually, the popular swap for the Fieros, believe it or not,
LS everything.
The popular swap for the Fieros is the 4.6 North Star V8.
I hate North Star. Everything about North Star.
I hate the North Star V8, and I don't understand why people like it.
It's like, hey, let's take this terrible engine that's terribly unreliable and throw it into a okay-ish car. I mean, if we're honest, when you get back to Y car, we've kind of answered that. But why was it a good car? Was it important? Was it iconic?
Not many cars can start their production run being chosen as the pace car for the Indianapolis 500. Now, I am a devout NASCAR fan. I will openly admit that the Indianapolis 500 is the second most important race in the world.
Behind the Daytona 500.
Behind the Daytona 500.
Thank you. But, so when we get into production numbers, in 1984, a total of 136,840 were produced. And when you jump to 1985, you had 76,000, 86, 83,000. Then you start dwindling from there down to 87, where only 46,000 were produced. In 88, a mere 26,000 were produced. So, the thing that I believe that was the downfall was after the oil embargo, after the oil crisis stopped.
They never put a V8 in it.
The market was hungry for something more powerful, something that was more sporty, and I think GM, in their infinite wisdom, decided to keep it the same.
Well, if you look at the sports cars that GM had at that time, they we're talking mid '80s, so they had just redesigned the Camaro and the Firebird
Right.
for the third generation. The C4 was just coming out. The Buick Grand National was there, which was the turbocharged V6 behemoth that was faster than the Corvette. You had the Monte Carlo SS. You had the Grand Prix 2+2 Aero. The two NASCAR-based cars. And
But did any of those beat the total production numbers for the Fiero for the select years?
none of those cars did, with the exception of, I'm willing to say the Corvette, if it wasn't over, it was close.
But it was in a different price range. I don't think this directly competed with the Corvette.
No.
And that's where I think GM had their thought wrong. This was a sports car that should have been marketed like the Toyota 86 is now. To a market that can't afford a $100,000 Corvette, they can afford the $25,000, the Toyota.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The Fiero formula actually was the last hurrah. The suspension was different. It had the big wheels and tires. It actually had a version of the WS6 suspension package from the Trans Ams, being wide suspension 6. And that's what WS stands for. If you ever have a friend with a Trans Am, you can tell them that. The thing with the Fiero, though, and I think this was GM's downfall with it, 1988, their last hurrah, they finally put T-tops in it. And it took them until the last year to put T-tops in.
And everything had T-tops.
And everything had T-tops.
That was the style. So when we talk about the car, we've talked about why it's a car, we've talked about the history, we've talked about kind of why it failed. But when we get into that, do you know of the problems? Because it can fail for a number of reasons, but ultimately it comes down if it's a good car or not. Good cars are gonna last.
Well, what are some of the problems that you believe are out there?
It has a very big reputation for engine fires.
That's a myth. No Fiero in the history of ever has caught fire.
All right, so that's speaking for somebody who has owned a Fiero.
Yes, I have owned a Fiero.
Somebody who has not owned a Fiero, I am ready to admit that there was an engine fire problem and that it did happen. So of the total production of the Fieros at 370,000, 135 of them were reported to have engine fires. So that's less than 1/3%, if we're being honest. And 122 of those occurred while driving. That's according to the NHTSB, National Highway and Traffic Safety Association. I don't know.
Yeah.
So the engine fires almost exclusively pertain to the 84 model year.
So there you go. The Iron Dukes were getting rid of themselves.
You say that
they didn't even want to be sports cars.
You say that, but the Iron Duke is such a great engine.
I'm not going to disagree with you. It was used forever in everything. I've personally had them in multiple vehicles, and I've never had an issue with one.
Yeah, knock on glass.
Yeah, knock on the glass table.
That's going to be great for the sound quality. All right, so we jumped to another issue. There were cooling system issues that ran pretty rampant.
Have you ever looked at the cooling system in a Fiero?
No, I've never touched a Fiero.
Okay. You really should. You should caress one. Call it sweet things. Take one for a drive. You'll buy one. Trust me.
You remember when I sent you the thing on Twitter? I almost bought the Fiero for $500 when the wheels were worth $1,000.
Yes.
I just couldn't get out there because I was working.
So the way it works in a Fiero, you have your typical upper and lower radiator hoses coming off of the engine.
All right.
They go into a metal pipe on the firewall.
And it went
that
all the way
pipe runs down the firewall under the car, up to the radiator, and back.
And so the problem was, it when you had that, it required a special cooling or a special filling procedure that when you filled it, if you didn't fill it right, it caused air pockets.
Yes.
Which that's the cooling issue. It was people doing their work at home instead of taking it to the dealer. Stupid dealers trying to get us to spend more money.
Yes, so you're blaming the owners for problems with the cars. You're blaming the car for problems with the owners.
I'm blaming the designers for making it too complicated.
So
That's
what
my
you're
story, and I'm
saying
sticking
is,
to it.
if you had the Fiero owner's manual and you read how to properly fill the vehicle...
If you read a manual, you're not doing cars right.
Now, this is where we're going to disagree. But anyway, I'll give you that. If you didn't know what you were doing, or you just thought, hey, this is the same as my 1971 Catalina. I can just dump water and, dirt in the radiator and everything will be fine. That's not at all how that's going to work. Now, here's this. So, why was this car important? Not only was it important because it was the first two-seat mid-engine sports car to come out of General Motors. This also led the way for space frame and polymer body panel construction.
Which Saturn later implemented,
Yes.
correct?
GM then took this, because remember, this went out of production in 88.
Uh-huh.
The first Saturns came around in 92.
So they took this directly and implemented it in the Saturn.
Yeah,
lineup.
and the Saturn SCs, the SLs, and the SWs.
Now, let's see. Who else here owns a Saturn?
That would be this guy.
All right. So, I don't know if you can catch the theme here, but, it seems like... So, he has the Fiero, which led directly into the Saturns. Like, what did you drive here, actually?
Sitting in your driveway is a 2006 Saturn Ion Redline competition pack.
Well,
Yes, space frame, polymer body.
somebody had to buy them.
Yes, somebody had to buy them. I bought one.
And then Saturn went out of business.
Saturn went out of business for a completely different reason. We'll cover that later.
All right.
Today, we're talking about the Fiero.
All right.
Now, what was the most popular option on the Fiero?
I have no clue.
You don't know what the most popular option on the Fiero was. It was a
Manual transmission?
It was a 9-inch by 22-inch pop-up sunroof.
That's the most popular option.
That was the most popular option.
Now, why would that be the most popular
Because
option?
that was one of the only options available on the Fiero. Your main options at the time of implementation were sunroof, automatic, or AM/FM cassette.
Who cassette?
Whew. Yeah. Now you could get your choice of exterior color, whether you wanted red, black, white, or blue, or silver, or you had your interior color choice, life-affirming beige, or the dark gray or black.
All right.
So there were choices out there for whoever wanted to walk into a Pontiac dealer and drop $8,000 on a Fiero.
Would you buy a Fiero?
Would you buy a Fiero? I've already had one.
Would I buy a Fiero for $8,000 at the time?
It's 1988. You walk into a Pontiac dealer, you have $8,000 to spend. Let's say this. You walk into a General Motors dealer. Okay, you have $8,000 to spend.
All right, $8,000 spent in. Let's see. I'm doing a little bit of research here, trying to figure out what I would. Let's see. How much would like?
Do you want me to? You want me to let you know what the mid-tier sports car for GM was?
All right.
So we're looking at the Pontiac Trans Am, Chevrolet Camaro.
All right.
1984. Do you know how much the Camaro is going to cost you?
How much?
$10,600.
All right.
So you can spend $8,000 on a Fiero,
or spend $2,000 more,
or you spend $2,600 more, and you get a Camaro.
I think that's worth it.
So if this was 1984, not the book, we're not going to eat people.
Damn it.
Soylent Green is people. So, 1984, you walk into a GM dealer.
Have you seen a 1984 Camaro?
Yes, I've seen multiple.
Now, you're telling me it's 1984. Close your eyes. Picture this. You walk in.
I see a lot of brown. I see a lot of mullets.
You are rocking your mullet. You have your denim jacket on. Van Halen is playing in the background. You walk out into that parking lot. What are you going for? Are you going for that Fiero? Or are you going for that damn Camaro? You have your mullet and you're ready to go.
Now, we all know my love of the F-body cars, the Camaros and the Firebirds. I've owned dozens more Camaros and Firebirds than I have Fieros.
So,
Austin, what's it going to take for me to get you into this Fiero today?
It'll take... I honestly don't know if I would buy one. I don't. I'm not in love with them. You know, it takes you being in love with a car to walk out with one. The car has to... It's like Harry Potter. The wand, you don't choose the wand chooses you. You don't choose the car chooses you, right? You see a car. I'm sure you've had this. You're searching on Craigslist. You're just scrolling through just to kill time. You see a car and you instantly know you're buying that car. You're calling them, you're making them an offer, and you're going to get it. That doesn't happen to me with a Fiero. Would I buy one today?
Would you buy one today?
Yes,
there's
100%.
There's thousands of Fieros 100%.
I would buy one today
for $1,000 to $1,500.
I would totally buy one. Get an Iron, just have an Iron Duke, rip that out, throw something else in there, then throw the Iron Duke in something stupid.
Okay, so let me ask you this: it's 1984. You have $8,000. You have $8,000 in your pocket in cash. Do you know what $8,000 buys you?
Not
If you want a sports car in 1984,
the Camaro's $2,000 more. Well, what are we looking at for a Corvette? What are we looking at for,
Mustang, or the Corvette's more, Grand National's more, Monte Carlo's more.
Mustang.
The Ford Mustang, 1984, you could get an LX 2-door sedan or a 3-door sedan. So you could get the coupe or the notchback, whichever, or the coupe or the hatchback. The notchback or the hatchback. There we go. Those are the two.
Now, to be fair, if I had the choice between the 1984 Mustang and 1984 Fiero every day.
Oh, Fiero wins hands down.
Have you seen the Mustang?
Yeah, the 4i Mustangs are ridiculously looking.
I mean, they were made for fuel economy.
Yes.
That's what they were made for.
But
at the same time, the MSRP
is $7,100.
Yeah, I mean, so
do you save $900 and get the car you don't want, or do you spend the $8,000 and you rock the 2M4?
Now, when it comes down to that, if you just have $8,000, you can't go a dime more. You're getting the Fiero, no question. But if you have a little money to play with, and you have the opportunity to go to 10, you could probably wiggle a Camaro down to 9.5.
I'm not saying you couldn't get money off a Camaro, but I'm not saying you also couldn't get money off the Fiero.
In 1984, they were flying off the shelves.
1984 was the biggest year for production.
They were flying off the shelves. So, that's you can't tell me that they're not going to stick to their guns on prices. They are. Well, that's a former car salesman.
We can sit here and speculate this all we want, but
when the new Titan came out, you think we were knocking stuff off? No, we were selling them over MSRP.
Well, that's the Titan. Anyone that was buying that obviously didn't have the sense to go buy a Ram.
Okay, Mr. Transmission Issues. Let's wait 5 years until your electrical system fries.
Anyway, so...
Okay, Fiat.
Now, today... We've already touched on the fact that you can get them today for between $1,000 and $2,000 in running condition.
Yep.
But do you know what else you can get today in running driving condition with a Fiero for less than $2,000.
What?
You can get a Fiero dressed as a Lamborghini Aventador.
That's true.
You can get a Ferrari F40. You can get a Ferrari 350. I'm actually looking at a Ferrari 355 right now on Craigslist. And it has this beautiful, ridiculous body kit on it. And it's utterly disgusting to look at.
Not only can you get
but
a
it's
Fiero,
a Ferrari 355.
I mean, imagine the sales pitch on that. Not only can you get a Fiero, but you can get a Fiero with really shitty bodywork and be the laughingstock of every car show.
But here's the thing. If you buy that Fiero with the Ferrari 355 bodywork, you can go to any junkyard in the country.
And they'll take it.
You can walk in and walk out with all of the body panels for a Fiero.
That's true.
But do you know what else you can do with Fiero parts? You can take the front steering or the front suspension and the steering and you can put them on your Chevette and you can upgrade your Chevette brakes.
All right. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad car. I'm not saying that you can't upgrade your Chevette. I'm also not saying that you can't make terrible decisions and turn it into a Ferrari. I'm saying I would buy one right now, $1,000. Go on, find one that needs a little work. As long as it had a manual transmission, hell yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. You have to get a Fiero with a manual transmission. The Fiero with the manual transmission boils down to any car's a race car if you drive it like a race car. The
Yes.
Iron Dukes make an amazing noise at over 3,500 RPM.
Between their 3,500 and their 5,500 RPMs, they make great noises.
In that 2,000 RPM range, they make amazing noises. Now, you can only hear them through T-tops in one ear, but finding them with the sunroof.
Did you know actually today on the Fiero cult forums,
Of course, there's a Fiero cult forum.
One of the most popular modifications you can do is cutting the top off.
And just making a Fiero Roadster.
Yes. So what you're doing is sacrificing all stability by cutting the top off because they never designed it like that.
No. Any vehicle, we do not condone the use of a Sawzall to remove the roof of the vehicle unless it's been structurally reinforced, children. And
My
don't
Jeep.
do drugs. Anyway, your Jeep's body on frame.
That's true.
So anyway, if you put a roll cage in it and then cut the roof off of it, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Be safe. Be stupid, but be safe.
I don't think those two things go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's a sliding scale. Any other points you want to make about the Fiero? Would you like to attack me personally anymore?
I'm just saying that the Fiero at the time, if you're buying a car at the time, the Fiero may not have been the best option, but it was a good option. It's like going to buy a mid-sized truck today. The Nissan Frontier is a good truck. Toyota Tacoma,
It's a truck.
The Toyota Tacoma is a much better truck. So it's like it was a car that was sold that was an option. I'll say that.
It wasn't. Again, you're right. It wasn't the best option.
But is it a great option today to just hoon in?
Yes.
100% yes.
That's the only reason you buy a Fiero.
All right.
You buy a Fiero if you want to do a cheesy Magnum PI theme on like a Lemons
grow
rally.
the mustache.
Or you buy a Fiero to just impress no one with. Because the people that are impressed by Fieros are
own Fieros.
Are impressed that Fieros are running.
The people that are impressed by Fieros, also own Fieros, B, live in their mother's basements. Don't argue me on that. Because their non-running Fiero is sitting in their mother's driveway.
When I owned my Fiero, I was not living in my mother's basement. Thank you very much. And I want you to tell me this. If you see a Fiero going down the highway, under its own power.
I look.
You look at it.
I
Do you
stare.
not smile?
I do. I smile.
Fieros bring happiness to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the episode on that bombshell of Fieros bringing happiness to everyone. I'm Donnie. That's Austin. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.